Hi, everybody. Welcome to Smart Self-Love, Radical Confidence for Women on the Rise. I'm so excited to share some amazing information with you today, and can't wait to get started. And what I'd like to do, just to confirm that you're on and you can hear me and our technology is all in alignment, is if you look at the right-hand side of your screen, there's a little chat box. Can you just check in and let me know you're there, you're hearing me, you're seeing me, and everything is cool? Okay, great. All right, so just to let you know that you're not able to tell exactly who's on this conference. So some of you like to stay private, and that's okay, and you prefer just to stay anonymous, that's completely fine. But I really encourage interaction and participation if you're comfortable with that. And I'm not seeing any messages quite yet, so I'm just hoping that everything is copacetic. Looking here, why am I not seeing it? Here we go. Rosemary, thank you. Awesome.
There's a delay.
I see. Okay, there's a delay. Cool. Cool. Okay, so let's get started. Again, I'm super excited. Some of you know me already, and some of you are new to me and to my work, so I want to take a quick moment just to introduce myself formally to you as other women continue to log on to our conference here. I am a licensed psychotherapist. I've been practicing psychotherapy for about 15 years, and before that I was a social activist for women's causes. And so altogether for about 20 years I've been working to empower women, and specifically in the areas of sexuality and global empowerment. So a lot of what I share with you here in this webinar series is about exactly that. And what I've done is I've culminated all of the most potent practices that I have found over the years, along with a lot of research and study, and I've coordinated it for you so that it's all in one easily digestible package. So I'm seeing lots of women log on. Okay, Megan, welcome. Tiffany, Glendine. Awesome. Okay, so I assume that more women are going to be logging on. This technology is an awesome new feature to me. I'm still learning it as well. So we're all in the moment together. So I want to explain this. So during the course of our 6 weeks, there's going to be a huge transformation, and I'm super excited to witness this in all of you. I really encourage you, if at all possible, to have a pen and piece of paper handy so that you can take notes. However, you also will have the ability to replay this broadcast at any time if there's something that you missed or you just want to go back and reinforce the principles. In fact, I actually recommend that. As long as you're here, I recommend getting the absolute very most out of it. So I'm seeing some more people logging on. Super exciting. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. Great. Okay, why I do this. Obviously, I'm very passionate about the women that I serve. I've also been opening my practice to life coaching, and the more that I really coach women and go deep with them, the more I'm seeing exactly where our hunger is in current society. I'm seeing, like, as women are empowering and we're rising in the workforce, we're rising politically, we're making slight gains politically, I'm still seeing a great gap or disparity in the overall happiness of women. So as we're seeing women empower, we're also seeing rates of depression rising, we're seeing rates of anxiety rising, we're seeing eating disorders, suicidality, all kinds of really disconcerting things are also on the rise. And so I want to address the gap. So why aren't we doing as well as we possibly could? And I really believe that it's a core issue of self-esteem, self-love, and how to instill confidence in women so that they do rise into positions of leadership and power. Great, more women are logging on. I also have a personal story, and I think this personal story is important to share. I did not come from privilege. I did not come from an educated family. Love my family very much, but neither of my parents even graduated from high school. And so, like most kids, you know, we follow in the footsteps of our family. And when I was 16, a junior in high school, I dropped out of high school and I ran away with my boyfriend, who was the lead singer in a punk rock band, and I lived in San Francisco for the better part of a year out of a van. And now having gone through some early challenges in my life, it inspired me to start making change. Through a series of interventions, I ended up going back to high school. I earned my high school diploma. I went to community college for 7 years, and then eventually had enough credits to transfer to a university, where I then went on afterwards to graduate school. So it took me about 9 or 10 years altogether to complete my education. I like to say I'm still in my education, but having that experience of not being born or not necessarily being taught life skills early in life made me had to go seek them. And so the opportunity in that experience was that I have gathered lots of tools in my toolkit that I love to share with other women. So regardless of where you are in your life, what you're wanting, where you come from, I want to let you know that absolutely anything is possible. Absolutely anything. So now I'm assuming most of the women are logged on by now, and I really want to encourage you to use this chat function on the right-hand side of your screen. And I'd love to hear from you, just a word or two of how you would like to feel at the end of this webinar. What kind of feelings would you like to have? I'm going to wait for those to come up because there is a delay here. So while you're writing, I'm going to move on with our curriculum. Okay, so as we go, if you have questions, I encourage you just to pop them up on the box. Okay. And I'm not sure why I can't scroll down. Why can't I scroll down? Pardon me, just one second. Okay, I can't figure it out. Here we go. Okay, awesome. Empowered, yes. Rosemary, thank you. I love that. You want to feel empowered. You want to feel full, of course, yes. I encourage you to really tune into your desire, like what it is you really, really want. Focused on action. Yes, I'm a big fan of action and getting things done. Absolutely. Inspired to take daily action. That's exactly what we're going to do, Lana. Yeah, I'm so glad that all of you are here. Yeah, so keep the commentary coming. I can see it now. Everything is good. Okay, awesome. On to the next thing. I want to let you know, and I'm going to start pulling up some slides here, that a lot of my orientation comes from evolutionary psychology. So there's some neuroscience in what I like to share, and my neuroscience is radically simplified. So I'm not a biologist, I'm not a physician, I'm not even a scientist, but I'm fascinated with the science of what happens in our body. And I think it helps us to know why. So it's not just enough to simply have the practice or engage in the practice, but to know why and how it's working in our body just serves as extra motivation. I know it does for me. So I'm going to be explaining that as we go along. And if you would like to have my references or my resources, you are so welcome to them. And just email me, and I'm happy to share that with you. Okay. Empowered to say no to what I want and don't want, especially with men. Absolutely. Empowered and passionate about making my dreams come true, feeling adequate enough. Absolutely. So here we go. You might find yourself laughing just a little bit about our dear sister here. So when I talk about evolutionary psychology, this is like one of my favorite pictures ever. When I talk about evolutionary psychology, what that means is a lot of our leftover adaptation skills have been misappropriated. Basically, our bodies have not evolved at the same rate as our technology. So while we're living in modern times, our bodies, our minds, our brains are still operating on a Neanderthal or a Cro-Magnon level. And so this gap in our adaptation, I believe, and it is the view of evolutionary psychology, is what creates suffering, illness, disease, and unhappiness. Here's her boyfriend. This is the Geico guy, if you're familiar with the Geico ad campaign. So the thrust of their campaign is it's easy enough for even a caveman to do. So here's a caveman in an Izod, in a collar shirt. I like to think about him when I coach women on dating and relationships, to remember that not only is our biology still living in hunter-gatherer consciousness primarily, so are the men that we're engaging with, and to remember that at all times. One thing about our evolutionary psychology is that we are wired to be living in tribal units. Human beings, as an animal, are not very well equipped to live on our own. In fact, we don't survive on our own. We don't have very good survival skills. We don't have claws or fur or fangs. We don't run fast. We don't swim well. We don't climb trees. What we do well is we collaborate. And when we live together in tribal units where we're cooperative, then we become extremely successful, obviously, as a species. So we're actually wired to relate, and we grow faster, we become stronger when we are supported and when we are together. So that's a big, very important part of this process over the next 6 weeks, is that we realize our togetherness. And one way I've addressed that is I've created a private, secret Facebook group, and all of you will be getting an invite, if you haven't already, to participate in that group. So I'd like to now segue into asking all of you, wherever you are, if you're in your car or watching this from your phone, if you can, just to place both of your feet on the ground for a moment. And if you can, even let your eyes close and just tune into the sound of my voice. And take a couple of nice, deep, easy belly breaths. And just allow the breath to clear away the day. So we learn so much better, we're more absorbent neurologically when we're relaxed and when we feel safe. And I invite you to put one of your hands over your heart and just allow the sensation of your hand to comfort you. And then I invite you to visualize or imagine all of the other women on this call. There's about 25 of you right now. Imagine all the other women on this call, and imagine that there's an invisible line of energy that connects all of us from heart to heart, so that together we are forming a complete network. And just take a breath into that awareness, knowing we're all on this ride together. And let your next exhale come through your mouth. And I know every single woman who has signed up for this journey is an incredible, powerful sister to us all. And I'm so looking forward to our continued interaction. Great, so you can come back and open your eyes, and let's get started. I want to begin by drawing a quick distinction. I consider self-esteem and confidence to be best friends. They're a little bit different, but they work together, and this will be important in our journey to understand this difference. So self-esteem is more of an attitude. It's more of an emotionally based experience. It's a feeling. It's how we feel about ourselves. It's how we recognize our internal, inherent strengths and worthiness. Confidence is a little different. Confidence is based on action. So confidence is the feeling we have when we feel competent or capable or able to complete an action. And so self-esteem and confidence work really well together. I imagine them having a kind of dance. And the way that they dance together is this: that when somebody has high self-esteem, it often supports their sense of confidence, but not necessarily. Somebody can have high self-esteem, but not feel confident in a certain area of their life. For instance, you might feel great about yourself and know that you are inherently worthy, but you know you don't have confidence in math, for example. And it can go the other way around. You might feel confident in one area of your life, but still have fairly low self-esteem. When somebody has high self-esteem, it tends to support the confidence. And when somebody's confident, it tends to support the self-esteem. But you can also have one without the other. So the way that I'm working with Smart Self-Love, Radical Confidence for Women, is that we work on both. So the self-esteem is what supports the action that we're going to be taking and holding each other accountable to throughout our journey. So some of you were on the call, or if you've listened to the call, you know that the absolute number one most important thing to beginning to build confidence is that you be willing to step outside of your comfort zone. And now when I say this, it usually engenders a little bit of resistance or fear, but it doesn't need to. So what I mean by stepping outside of your comfort zone is taking very small, measured steps, a little bit at a time, that stretches your sense of competency. And there's a neurological basis for this. All confidence occurs through action. Action is where it's generated from. And in order to grow, in order to succeed at anything, it's absolutely 100% necessary that we take risks. Without risk, there is no growth. That's just a reality. When we're afraid to take risks, we tend to stay in our comfort zone. We don't stretch ourselves. We don't challenge ourselves. And challenge is exactly where confidence comes from. The result of underconfidence is inaction. Some of us might have had or are having an experience of this inaction. And I guarantee you, once you start to build the confidence and be engaging in these practices, you're going to get active just naturally. You won't even have to think about it. You won't have to push yourself anymore or engage in the internal self-talk. I often think about women today who are battling with self-esteem or with confidence, which I think all of us are on some level, as willingly stepping into a prison of their own making and not even knowing that they actually have the key to let themselves out of the prison. So this is the key. The number one key to getting out of your own prison is stepping outside of the comfort zone. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of this. You might eat at a new restaurant one day or order a new dish that you've never tried. These are fairly safe ways of stepping out of the comfort zone. I know this is one for me. If you tend to take a back spot, like in the classroom or the yoga class, try putting your mat in the front and just breathing through the anxiety or the resistance that comes up to that, and do your best. Other examples of stepping outside your comfort zone, maybe having a little more honesty in your next conversation or asking that question you're afraid to ask. The more you do it, the easier it becomes, and it actually opens up new neural pathways in the brain. So once you start asking the questions that you're afraid to ask, and they might start in a fairly innocuous way, I guarantee you'll start getting better at asking the big ones. So you'll begin to graduate in your ability to tolerate discomfort. And confidence is very much a muscle. So I think it's fascinating to know that the way we build muscle is actually by stressing the muscle or putting a little strain or challenge on the muscle, such as lifting weights. And the more strain or challenge is placed on the muscle fibers begin to tear just a little bit, and that's when we feel the burn, like when we're exercising. And then those little tears in the muscle tissue signal protein cells to come in and replace the fissures or the places that are torn. And that's actually what turns into muscle tissue. But without the burn, without the stress on the muscle, it won't grow. And confidence is exactly the same thing. So we have to be constantly challenging ourselves and finding ways to overcome those challenges. And it begins to build what's called resiliency, which is a tolerance to challenge. And eventually you'll begin to enjoy the challenge, very much like when you start to get in shape. In the beginning it might feel arduous, it might feel really exhausting, or you might even feel really sore after the first couple times of working out, but very soon you'll start to welcome and invite that experience of being sore because you know what it leads to. You know that it leads to muscle and to fitness. So in my experience of working with women, it gets to be the same way. You'll start to really love challenges. And this is how self-love comes in to the equation. So I'll use the term self-love and self-compassion alternatively. Self-love is basically the idea that you are lovable, you are worthy, you are valued, and you are welcomed in a sense of tribal belonging, no matter who you are or what you do or what you achieve. So when we're engaged in a practice of self-compassion and self-love, it provides a kind of safety net to the risks that are necessary to take in order to feel confident. So imagine if you were a circus performer on a flying trapeze, you were a trapeze artist, and you were taking these flying leaps, kind of like the lady is in our slide here. If you did not have a safety net, you would be less inclined, probably, to take certain risks and make those leaps. Versus if you did have a safety net, you might be more comfortable taking those risks because you know that if you fall, you're going to be supported and you're not going to be hurt. So this is where self-love comes into the practice. And we'll also be really focusing on that every week as we go along, and I'll have you engaged in a self-love practice on your own. Do we have any questions so far? Great. Let's keep moving, and I'll look for your questions as they come up in the box. So a fascinating thing that I've discovered about women's psychology is that when we attempt something and we don't succeed to whatever standard we're holding ourselves to, we consider it a failure. So a big part of instilling confidence and building that muscle is reframing failure. So I'd like to even take the word failure out of our conversation. And Japanese and Asian cultures in particular have an interesting take on the idea of failure. So what you see here in this slide is a term called gaman, and this is a Japanese word, and it means keep trying. And it's the foundation for modern Asian parenting. So when we make an attempt and we don't achieve the desired results, let's say for instance, many of us practice yoga and we're trying to do a handstand and we fall and we don't achieve the kind of handstand that we really want to. Falling is actually a really important part of the process. And falling just allows us to recalibrate and to try again in a different way. It just helps us to understand the dynamics a little bit differently. And so in Asian cultures, they very much understand this, and they will actually purposefully challenge the children to try something that they know they're not going to be great at, just simply for the experience of trying and trying again and again, because it begins to build this muscle. And I'm seeing a question here from Cynthia. How do you build the self-esteem? Yeah, self-esteem, Cynthia, that's a wonderful question. Self-esteem is built in large part by the action we take through confidence. And there are a myriad of ways, hundreds and thousands of ways, to build self-esteem from the bottom up. As we go along, we're going to be addressing lots of those different practices. I'm a big believer, however, in building self-esteem and confidence based on evidence of our achievement. So however you define achievement, that's individual. So for some of us, achievement might look like choosing a healthy relationship with a wonderful man versus a bad boy. For some of us, achievement might look like earning more money, or achievement might look like showing up for yoga. You know, and I want to point out that all of you have shown up for this webinar. So just simply by the act of focusing your attention and showing up, and you all showed up on time at 6 o'clock for the live, feed of this, that's a huge achievement. Women historically are very high achievers by nature. We're not always the best at recognizing our achievements. So that's a big thing we're going to be working on through this series, is taking a pause, taking a breath, and actually retraining the brain to focus on what we have achieved. And I guarantee, Cynthia, that's going to begin to build your self-esteem. So back to Gammon. Gammon is basically a way of saying, okay, I made a mistake, here's why, and I can try a different strategy. So our sense of Gammon and not achieving what you set out to achieve initially or what you intended to achieve is really an opportunity for growth. And when we begin to frame it that way, then it's easier to take on challenges, and it adds to that sense of safety net that's underneath our risk-taking that's so important to build confidence. So Gammon, everybody. And Cynthia, I think that this is also going to start to address your great question of how do we build self-esteem. Here's what's going on in the brain. I was fascinated when I first learned this several years ago about the negativity bias. So back to our evolutionary adaptations. We are adapted as human beings to focus on what's negative. It is easier for us to ruminate on what's negative than it is for us to recognize what's positive. And if you do this, which most of us do, there's nothing wrong with you. And especially as a woman, there's nothing wrong with you. We especially are prone to the negativity bias. We are genetically programmed to give more attention to the negative because it helps us to survive. So it's more important that we learn which poison berry not to eat because we got sick on it than it is for us to remember someone who gave us a smile or someone who congratulated us on a good job. It's more important that we remember where the poisonous leaves grow versus the non-poisonous leaves are growing, because we really need to avoid the poisonous leaves. And so we automatically are going to remember the negative experiences and the negative perceptions more easily than we will the positive ones. And this is how and why we tend to filter out positive experiences and positive feedback and sometimes fixate on what went wrong or what went less than perfectly. So there's a great explanation for this. I love understanding this explanation because it helps us understand how to override it. To override the negativity bias, we can simply habitually focus on positive aspects. And a lot of us who are already engaged in a spiritual practice know this. We intuitively know this, but it helps to understand the biological function underneath it, that it actually reroutes habitual thoughts of criticism. Women in particular have a tendency toward criticism, and I like to call it discernment, actually. We're going to talk about this in a little more depth in a few minutes, but back to evolutionary psychology, women are programmed, we're wired through our hormones, especially estrogen, to be discerning. And the reason why is because while the men are out hunting and killing and protecting us, which is very important, women are gathering. We're the gatherers, men are the hunters. So when we're gathering, we need our powers of discernment to examine one berry as it's different from another berry. There might, and Alison Armstrong talks about this, where there might be minute differences between two berries. Women need to pick the one that's not going to make the whole tribe sick. I believe that this shows up in women's proclivity towards shopping. We love to scan, we love to discern, we love to compare one shoe against the other shoe and pick the one we want, sometimes both of them. And so when we get kind of stuck on this critical groove, what it is really a misappropriated gift of discernment that we're applying through our psychology and through the situation. The good news about this is you can absolutely retrain it. When we understand that we are just applying what Mother Nature gave us to survive in a way that isn't serving us, we can just simply turn the ship around. I think this is hugely empowering, and we're going to talk about how to do that. Here's a great image of the brain. So very simply put, this is extremely simplified. Every behavior, every thought, every action that you engage in or initiate creates what's called a neural pathway in the brain. And this neural pathway, if you can imagine it as being like a telephone line, and the more you use it, the more you use this skill or engage in this behavior, the thicker and thicker that telephone line gets. And it gets wider and wider until that action or that behavior or that thought then becomes habitual and automatic, and you don't even think about it. For example, mostly anything that you've learned, whether it's language or how to ride a bike or yoga, it creates a network of neural pathways in the brain that I call a neighborhood. So you develop a neighborhood of neural pathways that then translates into behavior. So how it applies to us and how we're going to build confidence and self-esteem is that all of your thoughts, as they gather, and the more you engage in them, are reinforcing these neural pathways in the brain and creating clusters of pathways that I call neighborhoods that then turn into behavior. So these clusters are what turn into belief systems. So if you're regularly thinking, I'm no good at this, or I'm terrible at math, or no one will ever love me, the more you think it, the more automatic that thought is going to become until it's habitual and unconscious, and you're not even aware of that thought anymore. That thought is then going to turn into a behavior, and you're going to act out of that thought. So a big part of what we'll be doing through this series is actually rerouting your thoughts. I like to think of it as like, remember an old-fashioned telephone board where the operators used to plug in and unplug certain wires. So we're going to unplug those wires of yours that are leading you to behaviors and outcomes that are not serving you. We're going to plug them into a different circuit so that you get exactly what you want. Rumination. Here's the deal with rumination. Time and time again, the women that I work with, either in psychotherapy or in my coaching practice, talk about how they obsess or fixate over something. It's usually a relationship, to be quite honest with you. I want to invite you, if this is true for you, just to make a little mention in the comment box on the right. And I think it might be really supportive if you're comfortable in just mentioning one word or two words about the stuff you tend to fixate on or ruminate on most. I think we'll all be surprised at how similar our answers are. So rumination, women are natural worriers. I mentioned this a little bit earlier about the role of estrogen in our psychology. So if you think about the role that women have in the tribe, women obviously care for the children, we nurture, we tend to be collective in our thinking, meaning we are concerned about the welfare, the well-being of the tribe as a whole. Men tend to be more focused on individual well-being and protecting the tribe, where women focus on nurturing the tribe. Women are also not biologically wired to fight. So we don't have as much aggression. That would be testosterone in action. But estrogen inspires us to scan the horizon for threats of danger. So while the men are off fighting predators and fighting threats to the tribe, women are at home scanning the horizon looking for any of this oncoming danger. We also are wired biologically to scan faces to look for signs of discomfort or disease. So, for instance, when we look into the face of our children, we look into their eyes and we intuit and we empathize and we're looking for what is wrong. So how this comes into effect in modern times, remember we're still kind of cave people living in modern skin, is that we're waiting for him to call. We're checking our phone, waiting to see if there's a text from him. We are scanning other women and constantly comparing ourselves to, comparing our bodies, comparing our appearance, comparing our income, etc. to other women because, number one, we are wired to scan and to discern, and number two, we're wired to worry. And I'm loving all of these answers that I'm seeing coming up on the right of the screen. A lot about relationships, which doesn't surprise me. Is he really right for me? Something we worry about. Does he really love me? Absolutely, that's a really common one. Worrying about relationships. Yeah, absolutely. So I think you can see we have so much in common. Rosemary, I worry all the time about everything, especially my family and friends. Yeah. My figure, my relationship. This is what I'm seeing. You know what, to be quite honest with you, I worry about all of these things as well. Where self-love can come into this practice is when we understand we're not crazy. We're not ruminating or fixating just because we are insecure or that we have low self-esteem. We're doing this because our estrogen is compelling us to do it. So can we give ourselves a break and have a little bit more compassion that this is our biological impulse that's compelling us to worry and to wonder? Again, knowing this puts us in a place of power because it helps us learn how to switch it off. Biologically, if we're scanning and worrying, looking for threats, looking for danger, looking for disharmony, all we need to do to switch it off is to engage in practices that promote safety. So when we tell our bodies and we convince our minds that we are safe, then we no longer need to scan for signs of danger. So again, I'm tuning into what you're all worrying about. Will my relationship help me to stay with my purpose? Or will it get me off track with drama? That's a great question. Do I deserve this? This is something we will worry about. Is he good for me? Is he right for me? Again, yeah, again, relationships coming up. And no surprise, women naturally attend to relationships. Relationships tend to be the most important thing to us because we, again, in the tribe, attend to connection. We are the empathic bond of the tribe. So there's, again, nothing wrong with you. You're being completely within your nature when you're fixating on your relationships and with meeting men and having connection. That's a beautiful thing. So back to the solution. To switch it off and to engage in practices that promote safety. So one thing I'll be working with all of you on is how to breathe your autonomic nervous system down. So relaxation is such an important part of women's wellness because we tend to be extremely hyperperceptive to danger and to threat. And so when our nervous system is aroused, when we're activated and we feel unsafe, that's when it triggers the fantasy factory and the obsessive fixation rumination. And so let's take, for instance, a really common and fairly innocuous circumstance. So you've met a man and you went on one date and he's not calling you and you felt really attracted to him, and day by day is passing and he doesn't call and he doesn't call. On some level, your psychology is perceiving that experience as a threat. It's feeling like a danger to your psychology and probably to your ego because it feels like I'm really into him and he's not calling me. What does that mean about me? Does that mean I'm unlovable? Am I unattractive? Did I do something wrong? And so simply beginning to affirm yourself that you're safe and that you have got your safety net, that your worth does not depend on anybody else to affirm it, that you can take risks in life, you can take that leap as your, in your inner trapeze artist, and know that even if you fall, you're good. So I'm seeing a couple more comments. I worry about violence against people. Absolutely, again, because women are community-minded. We care very deeply about the tribe and the world at large. Here's another worry. Do I trust my fear? Is it telling me something that I need to know? So sometimes we are not always trusting our deepest instincts and intuitions, and we question that. Yeah. So I think through the course, we're going to start to address that. Okay, let's talk about your homework for this week. We have just about 15 minutes to go, and I also want to leave some time to address your questions as they continue to come up. But a big belief of mine that I want to assert to you before we move on to our homework is around going with your nature instead of fighting it. So we've talked a lot about evolution, we've talked a lot about biology, and I want to invite you all just to take a moment, take a nice breath, and just begin to recognize that all of these things you've been doing in terms of worrying and questioning and having anxiety is completely part of your nature. And it doesn't mean that there's anything dysfunctional necessarily about you. It means that you're doing exactly what a woman would do in any tribe. So I invite you to just place your right hand on your left shoulder and your left hand on your right shoulder. And just give yourself a little squeeze. And you might even think to yourself, that you're okay exactly the way you are. And that anything that you've engaged in the past, in terms of your rumination, your fear, your worry, your questioning yourself, is quite all right. Great. So when we relax the nervous system, then again our mind opens and we're able to hear things on a deeper level. We're actually able to absorb them, and they tend to stick in the brain. Great, so coming back, I want to give you a couple examples of a great way to begin building your confidence and your self-esteem. About 10 years ago, I had a really deep desire to learn how to sing. And singing is not something that, I'm going to come back to this screen just for a second so I can see you. One moment. There, great. Here I am. So singing is not something I have ever been trained in, and not something I've ever done in a serious way. But about 10 years ago, I just felt compelled to learn how to sing. So I took a singing class, and it terrified me. Probably like a lot of people, singing can be really scary. The end of this singing class culminated in a solo performance. So we had a big audience come, and we all had to sing 2 songs with just us and a pianist. So I got up there to sing, and I swear to you, it was the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. And good thing I was wearing a skirt, because my knees were literally knocking, and I could not stop the shaking of my knees. But after that experience, I survived it. I think I did okay. I don't know, of course, I look back on it, I was very critical. But what mattered was that I tried. So what's important here, and what I really want you to take with you in this very first webinar, is that it's important that you attempt. It's the attempt, remember, that grows the muscle. And remembering your gamen, remembering that there is really no such thing as failure. It's just information on how to try it in a new way, how to develop a new strategy. And actually, when we don't achieve something to our intention, what it does is it forces us to dig a little deeper and to tap into very creative parts of our brain and creative parts of our thinking that we weren't formerly tapping into. So in a very simplistic way, it actually makes you smarter to fail at something and to try it in a new way. So I invite you now just to look back on something that you might have done recently, something that you attempted. It could be even something small, like we mentioned, a yoga pose, or absolutely anything. Maybe you tried to cook a new dish and it really didn't taste good. I have done that quite a lot. And using the kind of mindset that we're talking about now, just begin to reframe that experience. And notice if you're engaging in excessive criticism about what you attempted. And realize if you're also indulging in your negativity bias, if you're framing things in the negative. And whatever you do, by all means, do not beat yourself up for framing things in the negative, because now we understand that's our biological impulse, that what you're doing is just a leftover adaptation skill. So it's not quite as big of a deal. So think back to that thing that you attempted. It didn't quite turn out the way you wanted it to. And I want you to really, really give yourself credit for even attempting. Remember, it's the attempt that's important. So we'll begin right now to open new neural pathways. For some of us, this can be really challenging, to recognize what you've done well and to give yourself credit for that. So let's open that neural pathway right now. If it's not already initiated, let's forge it. And it's kind of like if you were wandering in the forest and you were actually clearing a trail. So you're creating a new path. Sometimes that forest could be really dense and overgrown and thick with bushes and brush and prickly thorns. Sometimes it's fairly open. Maybe there's already a little bit of a clearing. So just tune into what that path looks like for you. And you might even imagine coming through with like a bushwhacker or a machete even. Maybe you're just pulling up the weeds and branches and brambles that are blocking the way of your path. And imagine that this path leads all the way up to a beautiful, beautiful summit with an incredible view. So giving yourself credit for the attempt. Great. So let's go back to our homework screen, because I want to talk about this for just about 10 minutes left in our call. Okay, here we are. Step number 1 in building your new confidence is to stretch your comfort zone just a little every day. Identify in advance at least 2 activities that you can try tomorrow. And it's going to be really important that you journal these every single day and record your results. So here we go. You have committed to this series. I'm extremely proud of you. I really want you to work this, and I really am going to be holding you accountable and hope that we're all holding each other accountable. On the right-hand side of your screen in the chat, I invite you to write down 1 or 2 things that you're willing to try every single day that stretches your comfort zone, something that feels a little uncomfortable to you. And now my advice is to start small. Make it fairly easy for yourself. When we begin to experience success, it builds more success. So it actually activates the reward centers in the brain. So when you set a goal and you accomplish it, then your brain releases dopamine and endorphins, and it feels really good. This is what we call the experience of feeling proud or feeling happy. So set a goal for yourself that you feel like you could pretty easily reach, even though it is a little bit uncomfortable. And I'm going to ask you, if you'd like to share that with the group, just to jot that down in the chat box on the right. And also, I'm going to invite you to share it in our Facebook forum. As we all know, when we have to report on our homework, it might actually motivate you a little bit more to do it and get it done. Some of the women that I've been working with in coaching have been doing this, and I got some feedback from a woman just the other day. Oh, great, they're starting to pop up. Start running again. That's awesome. Yes, that's great. I got a great report from a woman just the other day who is practicing her headstands. And practicing her headstands, this is in yoga, she's practicing them away from the wall. So here we go. They're coming in. Get up with my alarm instead of oversleeping. That is awesome. That's one I could actually work on myself. Yeah, keep them coming. Number two, second part of our homework, and this could possibly be the most important piece, is immediately afterwards celebrate yourself. So the celebration can be really simple. It can even just be like a self-congratulation, telling yourself, I did great. I did a great job. I got an A, an A in effort. um, I think I'll share with you a practice that I'm in about fitness and working out. So um, fitness is a really big part of my life and something that is very important to my well-being, my mental health. And sometimes when I absolutely do not want to go work out, I don't want to go to yoga, I don't want to go to my cardio bar class, which is something I've been getting into lately, I will just get myself there. Like in 12-step groups, they say, bring the body and the mind will follow. I just get myself there. And I might even choose an easy class, something that's like underneath my level. But the fact that I get there at all, I give myself self-esteem points just for showing up. So here are some more responses I'm seeing coming in. I'm seeing, tomorrow I will practice saying no. I will do what my meditation reveals, free of distraction. I want to do headstands too. Wake up at 7 a.m. and go swimming 5 days a week. Here's a great question. Does it have to be the same thing we keep attempting? Or 2 new things every day is okay? That's a great question. So it doesn't really matter as long as it's stretching your comfort zone. So if you attempt to do something new and it's uncomfortable for you one day, it might not be as uncomfortable for you to do it again the next day. So if it's not uncomfortable for you anymore, then it's not building the muscle. So it's kind of like if you're engaging in the workout and it's not challenging your muscle, then you're not growing it. However, just by the very action of doing it, you'll get what I call self-esteem points. Kind of like when I show up to a yoga class, like a level 1 yoga class, it's a little bit too easy for me. At least I showed up and I did it. So I would encourage you to keep stretching yourself. And I think what you'll find is that as soon as you stretch yourself a little bit, it's going to get easier and easier every day to try new things that challenge you. And this comes into the idea of mastery. I want to mention this along with your homework. So a big, big key essential point of building confidence is having a sense of mastery over at least one thing. So when we recognize our strength or our capability in one area of our life, our brain does not exclusively identify that one single thing. It generalizes. So if you're really good at dancing or cooking, or you play an instrument, or you're a really good friend, you're a great listener, once you recognize that and allow yourself to celebrate it, meaning there's a release of dopamine in the brain and you're getting a reward for recognizing what you do well and feeling good about it, then the brain will begin to, like we talked about, create a neural pathway, which then turns into a neural network or neighborhood that then generates a belief system. So being good at one thing and knowing it begins to sprout a belief system that you're good at anything. It builds generalized competency. So just before we go off, we've got about a little less than 5 minutes left on our call here. I'm really enjoying seeing all of the responses here. Get back into my exercise routine every day. Gratitude journal. That's a great idea. So just make sure that the goals that you're setting right now for yourself are easy to attain and that they create, this is going to sound weird, but make sure that it makes you uncomfortable. So some of these are really, really great practices, like writing in your gratitude journal. That's a wonderful goal if it makes you uncomfortable. If it's comfortable, then it won't build the muscle. Of course, hey, I want to say that making a gratitude journal is always a great idea. Yes, absolutely do that. Journal every morning and practice yoga at home. Absolutely, please do that. But make sure what you're doing is out of your comfort zone. So it might entail, instead of doing a practice that you already know and that you're already familiar with, it might entail doing something completely different that feels really weird. And that's what we're after here. That's how we're going to get the best results. So just before we close, along these ideas of mastery, I want to close on this really amazing idea, this concept. I would like for all of you to identify at least one thing that you know you're good at. It could be anything, small or large, one thing that you know you're good at. And just write them down in the chat box. Okay, and then lastly, I'm going to look for those answers. Okay, great. Right now, gratitude makes me uncomfortable. Great. That's a great practice for you then. Wonderful. Okay, so the last piece of our homework, I want you to continue writing down one thing that makes you, or one thing you know you're good at. One thing you know you're good at in the chat box. And while you're writing that, lastly, I want to invite you to share your homework on the Facebook group or with a friend. So if you choose not to be a part of the Facebook group, that's completely okay. Definitely respect your privacy and what feels good in your life and your practice. If you're not part of our Facebook group and part of the dialogue there, then at least share it with a friend. For women, this is extremely important. We're very verbal creatures, we're communal creatures, we're relational, and so when we share our successes with a friend, then it's providing a kind of neurological confirmation that it really happened in our brain. And also, likely that friend is going to provide you with some positive feedback and reinforcement, which kind of seals the deal, it seals it into the brain as being a good thing. And I guarantee you, the more you share your successes and the more you acknowledge your successes, the more you will have. So I'm seeing some of your strengths as you're writing them. This makes me so super excited. Good at dancing, good at cooking healthy, tasty meals. There you are. Listening and really hearing people, doing deep work with others, coordinating people and productions. There's another dancing. Absolutely. Women love dancing, don't we? Making art. Yes, Cynthia, I have a lot of your art on my refrigerator. You are indeed good at art. Good at compassion. Yeah, this is wonderful. Wonderful to see. Okay. So, I hope everybody is clear on your homework. And off we go. Week 1 of Smart Self-Love, Radical Confidence for Women. So please, by all means, log on to the Facebook group. We're going to, I think, have a lot of activity there. We've got some super, super amazing, powerful women on this journey. I'm really excited for all of you to meet each other and get to know each other and become sisters and support. And if you have any questions, by all means, I invite you to email me at eva@evaclay.com. Send me any of your questions or your feedback. And next week, we're going to go even deeper, and we're going to start focusing on body image, which is something foundationally for most women have some struggle with at some point in their lives. We're going to talk again about the neurobiology of why we struggle with our body image, and really emphasizes a lot of time on how to get over that and how to feel comfortable in our skin and how to feel beautiful all the time and no longer be hung up on insecurities. So it's been such a pleasure to be here with you. I'm super excited. Go for it, ladies. And I'm going to see you next Wednesday at 6 o'clock. And have a great week. Do your homework. Good luck being uncomfortable. Let me know how it goes. Okay, bye.